On the Wake of Greatness presents The Center with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, friends, family, enemies, and allies. I am your host, DC Radical One, and this is The Center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, radio. Uh, my apologies for not announcing this episode of The Center on Insta. I had other things, had a lot of irons in the fire, but I realized that this is the last day that I'm gonna have this version of StreamYard. So I wanted to just come on and do this show real quick. Hopefully it'll be about an hour and a half. I think we are streaming on Instagram as well. So if you're on Instagram and you think you might want to ask some questions or whatever the case may be, come on over to the YouTube side. It's YouTube DC Radical One. Straight Black Pride, the sister Vanessa, be before there, brother Tony, and be before there, the brother You Got Ripped Off. So hopefully we have some more people coming on. Tonight's discussion is going to be about Africa's military and why it is so limited. And I just think that's a timely discussion in the time that we're in. Because just being completely honest, the chances of being a relevant nation in the 21st century without the highest technology of military infrastructure is virtually impossible. Really, you got ripped off. Let me know. Am I missing anything in the setup thus far? I don't think so. Let's see. I don't know where I want to start tonight. I think I'm gonna start with the AES, and then I'm getting to the military aspect. Can you send this out to a few more people on Telegram? I sent it out to like 3 groups. You can send it out to 3 more. I really appreciate it. See if we can get the numbers up. Oh, I'll tell y'all now. There's certain thresholds that if we don't meet, I'm just like, okay. It's demotivating. But, I did pay for this month. This is the last night. This is an important subject. So we will take it from here. How's everybody been? How y'all feeling? It's about to be warm. It's about to be spring. Hopefully positive things are happening in everyone's life. And hopefully the rest of 2025 can be better than what's been so far. I think that I swear this is the second time, but I think it's different people. People personally reaching out to social media to about cases of missing relatives, missing loved ones, weird cases of where people allegedly commit suicide in parts of the country where Black people aren't welcome. And so I'm starting to see the rise of that when I round up that information. do a show on that. But tonight I want to talk about something positive. And let's just be honest. The lack of a military wing that can defend the lives of black people globally is a large reason why these things take place, right? Because people don't fear retaliation, they'll do whatever. We've seen that throughout history. Saw a post on Instagram today talking about how people having the 1960s mentality. I challenge that because in the 1960s, we had the Deacons for Defense, we had Robert F. Williams, and then we had the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army. So I don't see any of that here. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody wants to inform me if I'm missing something, where black people are organizing in militant formations and exacting retribution on domestic terrorists. If I have missed that, please inform me. So I'll do a story on that. That's worth doing. But other than that, I don't know. If you got ripped off, if you got I don't know where you at. If you got a chance, can you check the Instagram side? If it's anybody over there, invite them over to the YouTube and give them the greetings for me, as I'm getting ready to go ahead and get started. By the way, and I still don't have the information out. Brother Genie is going to be in Norfolk, Virginia on April 5th. So not this Saturday, but the Saturday after that. And let me get that information real quick so that I can relay that to you. I'm trying to think, where would he have put it though? Okay, that might not be quick. And just remind me at 10 o'clock. I'm planning to be out of here. Yeah, brother. Yeah, I did. Because I'm probably gonna take a hiatus for a couple of weeks, so I probably won't need the upgraded StreamYard until the middle of the month. So, but I'll let you know about that. I'll just put together some content to let it run until I get back. So let's get started. Let's get started with this article about the AES, and we'll go from there. This is from a few months back. It says Alliance of Sahel States stepping forward with common economic and security aspirations. The trio aims to create an economic and monetary union, as well as its own currency, which should be based on the natural resources of the member countries in the Confederation. And of course, in this picture here, we have from left to right our good brother Assimi Goita of Mali on the left. In the middle, we have our brother from Niger, General Abdurrahman Chiani. And of course, to the right, the brother probably doesn't even need an introduction. As Captain Ibrahim Traore, as they are standing strong for African sovereignty and looking like the warriors that they are. Okay, brother, thank you. See if anybody else comes through. I'm gonna just be honest. This is one of the few things, what these brothers are doing is one of the few things that brings joy to my heart in this day and time. So, all right, let's get into the article. It says on January 29, 2025, who wrote this? That's not correct. Within rapidly changing geopolitical, or either rapidly or within rapid geopolitical changes. Yeah, it should be rapid and not rapidly. Anyway, I'm not trying to be the editor or the English police, but I am trying to read it. It's not written correctly. 3 landlocked countries, namely Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, members of the newly created Alliance of Sahel States, the AES, declared their withdrawal from the most influential bloc, ECOWAS, the most influential bloc in Africa. Man, who wrote this? No, seriously. first implication was that 2025 marked the 50th year of the establishment of ECOWAS, which I did not know. Undoubtedly, it will simultaneously remain in history as in the history of the Alliance of Sahel States as the period of their exit from the 50-year regional bloc, established by the Treaty of Lagos in May 1975. Perhaps ECOWAS has been fractured with an uncertain future. On the other side, the AES will seemingly grow in strength as republics Cote d'Ivoire, Chad, Ghana, and Senegal have shown signs of unswerving support for the newly created security operation in the region. Despite broader criticisms and emerging challenges, the AES has the capacity to forge expected integration and to tackle existing diverse obstacles while navigating further for strategic external collaboration. The AES was established on September 16, 2023, with the signing of the Liptako-Gourma Charter by the states of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The three countries share the cross-border region of West Africa and the Sahel called Liptako-Gourma, from which it derives its symbolic name of the charter. It is a collective defense bloc aimed at countering any military intervention or any external threat, including terrorism, and with the ambition of economic integration. Since last year, the AES has focused on structuring projects in the field of energy, infrastructure, transport, and food security. The trio aims to create an economic and monetary union, as well as its own currency, which should be based on the natural resources of the member countries in the Confederation. Now, I know that everyone who listens to me regularly is already aware of most of this information. So this would be a review, but still, I just wanted to see what they said. Now, this is one thing that I found. It's extremely difficult, and I don't know if it's the language barrier or if they're trying to hide the information, but it's extremely difficult to find any neutral to positive information on the AES. Like, you have to reword and put in, there's stuff that I know that's taking place, but then I look for it or look for an article or something, and it becomes extremely difficult. I'm not sure what that is. Like I said, it could be a language barrier, or it could be something more nefarious that I'm not sure. So, if you get back to the article, it says at a glance, Burkina Faso is the driving force, while Mali and Niger have, in practical sense, shown the pathways for evolutionary influence, as well as shaping a codified dynamism to hold the alliance informed towards achieving its primary security objectives and economic development aspirations. Now, suddenly, this person is a literary genius. For over a year, their joint effective strategy has been working, and the collective divorce from ECOWAS late January 2025 was an irreversible factor that was based on the fact that ECOWAS has unprecedented weakness combined with its historic record-breaking failure in its mandate to maintain regional security. In short, the rising insecurity situation has undermined regional cooperation, set the stage for dissatisfaction among the member states. With the sudden withdrawal from the 15-member ECOWAS, it is understandable that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have attained the collective independence and prepared to form this new, forward-looking regional partnership bloc, popularly referred to as the AES. And let me start right here. The part that's interesting in that article is the failure of ECOWAS to maintain security. One of the reasons that it's hard for any African nations to maintain security is because of the poor military infrastructure that African nations have. It's one thing that I noticed that when you look into what's going on in Sudan, and you look at what's going on in Congo and other places around Africa where they have conflict, one thing that you notice in comparison to, say, looking at Russia, the Bosnia situation, you see the lack of advancement of military technology on the continent, right? Now, the fact that these are continental, or these are conflicts that are happening within the continent, in a way is good. Like, we don't need more effective weapons to use on each other, right? So let's just be honest. In the days where black people had gangs and they were only using 22s and 9s and brass knuckles, that was better than when the 80s came, and on the West Coast and in Miami, they were getting Uzis and Mac 10s and whatnot. That was not good, right? Now, on the other hand, if the Uzis and Mac 10s were being used to defend the community, then that would have been a good thing. But that was not a good thing. Brother Tony says colonialists fear them. They fund the insurgents / terrorists. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we know that, brother. But no, that's an excellent point. Anyway, let me get back to this. Says that ECOWAS and African Union's reactions. I mean, ain't nothing they can do about it, but let's just read it anyway. It says reactions from both the ECOWAS and African Union were business as usual, characterized by official administrative statements. Late January, after the 3 French-speaking West African states exited, the Peacekeeping and Regional Security Commission of ECOWAS said the remaining members tentatively had agreed to keep ECOWAS doors open by reorganizing national passports and identity bearing the bloc's logo for countries to continue trade under existing regional agreements and to continue diplomatic cooperation within the countries, or with the countries, excuse me. The statement noted that the withdrawal of Burkina Faso, the Republic of Mali, and the Republic of Niger from ECOWAS has become effective as of January 29, 2025. While the Regional Security Commission has set up a structure to facilitate discussions on these modalities for each of these countries, its official statement categorically noted the following. Recognizing of national passports and identity cards bearing ECOWAS logo held by citizens of Burkina Faso, the Republic of Mali, and the Republic of Niger until further notice. To continue to treat goods and services coming from the three countries in accordance with ECOWAS trade liberation schemes and investment policy. Allow citizens of the 3 affected countries to continue to enjoy the right of visa-free movement, residence, and establishment in accordance with ECOWAS protocols until further notice, and to provide full support and cooperation to ECOWAS officials from the 3 countries in the course of their assignments for the community. So basically what it sounds like they're saying is they're going to keep things business as usual, I guess, to keep the peace, not to cause confusion. Other than that, it's a standard as usual. So let's go to what they talk about natural resources, because that's always something. It says, in any case, understanding economic potentiality and sustainability is crucial at this stage. The economic potential is huge, as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger put together hold tremendous untapped resources. According to various sources, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger territorially share borders together and are landlocked countries in West Africa, the Sahel region. They are geographically biodiverse, which includes plentiful reserves of gold, manganese, copper, and limestone, and other invaluable natural resources. The landmass is huge for traditional agriculture, but public infrastructure are poorly developed across the region of their location. Predominantly, the system of state governments combined with gross lack of finance are the main obstacles to sustaining development. As known in these African countries, the French adopted a form of indirect rule, which was the problem, allowing existing native structures to continue to exist within the colonial framework of governments. But now, reawakening to the neo-colonial administration and opaque systems of government control have a significant impact on current political development. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, to some considerable extent, have great human capital. 2024 estimates of population have revealed that Burkina Faso has 22.5 million people. Mali, which is the 8th largest country in Africa, has approximately 21 1.9 million people, and Niger has 26.5 million people. So we're talking about basically slightly less than 70 million people combined in a large landmass, which to me means that the area is not very densely populated at the moment. If Mali is the eighth largest country, then the combination of such would seem to move them up. Anyway, the UN Development Program report ranked Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger as the Sahel countries with the lowest category of development index in the world. The future growth may only be sustained by the exploitation of natural resources, and that must necessarily be tied to the development of the country, building infrastructure, and focus on reducing poverty in these French-speaking West African countries. Now, I find this, and this is from Modern Diplomacy, I find this interesting that they say that the future growth may only be sustained by the exploitation of natural resources. I'm not gonna lie, I hate Europeans' way of speaking. Like exploitation, like everything is exploitation and attacks, and you know that y'all know the language that I'm talking about. Why can't it be utilization of your resources as opposed to exploitation of your resources? What was happening was that foreigners were exploiting the resources. They're trying to utilize their resources for their own development. I know it's I know it's a minor distinction, but it's a major distinction. Anyway, let's go to future economic implications. It says the AES has the capacity and commitment to address developmental shortfalls. Several developmental initiatives were already taken in the direction to stimulate economic sectors, particularly in the priority areas of agriculture, livestock, health, and energy infrastructure. Burkina Faso currently stepping up efforts in the agricultural sector, where we've seen Mr. Traore bring in farming equipment and hand it out to the people, while Mali and Niger restructuring roles of foreign players in exploiting mineral resources such as gold and uranium. This allows greater economic and political autonomy in order to strengthen their sovereignty. Perhaps they will further have the opportunity to pursue more economic policies in line with the existing realities dictated by the political environment and to bolster aspirations of maintaining stability across that landlocked region. I will say this, and this is about Africa in general. Africa's future will brighten greatly when the northern part that has access to the Mediterranean Sea and the northern part that has access to the Atlantic Ocean are finally integrated into African society. Right now, those places, like especially Libya and Mauritania, are particularly hostile to African people. And eventually, the rubber's gonna have to meet the road. Now, I'll say this. Do the countries of Europe want an African-controlled Libya and by Africans, an African-controlled Mauritania, an African-controlled Egypt, for example? The answer is no, right? Because if Africa gets control of its sea coast, there's two things. One, that puts them infinitely closer to Europe, right? And make no mistake, Europeans understand what the Rock of Gibraltar is, right? They understand that history very well. They haven't forgotten that. Just because we don't know doesn't mean that they've forgotten. So, but that will, when we get to the point when we see that, that means that the continent is truly free. Brother, you got ripped off says that Togo is in talks to join the AES. Okay, I had not seen that. Thank you for that, brother. That is interesting to note. Let's see. It says obviously the AES is getting oriented towards multipolarity, which is intended to be a more inclusive and concerted effort where different countries and regions work together to find common solutions. By pursuing the principles of multipolarity world, the AES could engage in pragmatic win-win partnerships to advance their interests for the purpose of economic development, growth, and stability. The AES collective pledge further requires making collaborative efforts and, in a systematic manner, work towards sustainable development, find better chances for political situations to existing economic deficiencies. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have to adopt strategic positions, first in West Africa and generally in Africa. So, I'm going to move right into the next article, and then we'll get into, no, I don't want to subscribe, thank you. Oh, they got another article I want to read too. Goodness. It says Sahel Alliance unveils new flag as regional bloc moves toward greater integration. The AES unveils a new flag as member nations forge a new path forward towards regional unity, economic independence, and territorial security. The alliance, the AES, that includes Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, which we know, has taken another decisive step towards regional integration following its recent withdrawal from ECOWAS. On February 22nd, the new flag was unveiled and symbolized the bloc's growing autonomy as it seeks to redefine its political, economic, and security structures outside the influence of French imperialism and the Western neoliberal framework. The new flag showcases the AES logo, an orange sun radiating over a sturdy boab tree. Beneath the tree, a group of silhouette figures gather, symbolizing unity. The flag also features an outline of the three combined AES territories, now presented without the borders that once separated them. Set against a green backdrop, the design represents growth, hope, diversity, and renewal, reflecting both the promise of the alliance's future and the vast natural resources of its member nations. Now let's stop right here. One thing that is obvious that other people, I don't even know, let's see who wrote this article. This is People's Dispatch. One thing we see that people always recognize is the vast mineral wealth and natural resources of the continent. Nobody misses that part. If you notice. Now, we're going to bypass the ECOWAS decision. We've already dealt with that. It says dismantling, colonial legacy. The Sahel Alliance is actively engaged in decolonization efforts, both symbolic and structural. In Burkina Faso, the government has removed British and French-style judicial wigs traditionally worn by the judges. Man, it's about time. Marking a break from colonial judicial norms. Across the three nations, colonial-era monuments and street names are being replaced with symbols that reflect indigenous heritage and anti-colonial resistance. Moreover, military agreements with France have been terminated. French troops were expelled from Mali in 2022 and later from Burkina Faso and Niger. Following widespread protests against France's military presence and accusations that it was exacerbating instability rather than addressing security concerns. The AES push for self-reliance continues amid heightened geopolitical shifts in Africa, where many nations are reconsidering their alliances and economic models. The trio's bold moves have drawn popular support as many on the continent hailed them as a necessary assertion of sovereignty and a model for other African nations seeking autonomy and Pan-Africanist aspirations across the continent. Yeah, I mean, even though the flag, you can say, is symbolic, I think it's still a step forward. But if what the brother you got ripped off for saying is correct, they it look like they'll be adding countries to the flag as soon as they have got the thing up on the flagpole. But that is good, unity is strength. So if they can bring in some more nations, especially if they can get a nation where they can get access to the Atlantic Ocean, possibly, or the Mediterranean Sea, then they'll be, as my my family members used to say, cooking with gas. Now, what I want to talk about is that was the good news, right? I think we think all of that is good news. What I wanted to talk about was some bad news. It's from Mr. Trump. This is from PBS News. And wow. See, I'm trying to take this stuff off. All right, here's Mr. Trump. U.S. and Israel look to Africa for permanent relocation of Palestinians from Gaza. Look, one thing about life, things are going well, somebody's going to try to mess it up. And if things are going bad, nobody's going to try to help. Right? Just being completely honest. You know what I'm saying? Things are going bad, people just kind of move out your way. They're like, oh, he's falling, move out the way. But anyway, the U.S. and Israel have reached out to officials of 3 East African governments to discuss using their territories as potential destinations for moving Palestinians uprooted from the Gaza Strip under President Trump's proposed post-war plan. American and Israeli officials told the Associated Press. Now let's stop right here before we even get started. Any African country that would consider this, as the British would say, has gone mad. The idea of taking 250,000, 500,000, 1 million, I don't know how many that's left, angry, traumatized, genocide surviving Palestinians and moving them to Africa is absolutely insane. And I forgot, I didn't even load up that video. So my apologies, because I had a video. I don't even think I saved it. I looked right at the video. Anyway, I had a video where they were talking about this. But still, this would be completely destabilizing to whatever region these people would be put in. And it would be a nightmare for everyone involved except for Israel and America, because America is not going to face any repercussions, and Israel get what they want, which is to remove the Palestinians, what they've been trying to do from minute one. Actually, from before Israel was Israel, there were massacres taking place that people never talk about. So this is just a horrible idea all the way around. So anyway, let me get back to the article. It says that the contacts with Sudan, Somalia, and the breakaway region of Somalia known as Somaliland reflect the determination by the U.S. and Israel to press ahead with a plan that has been widely condemned and raised serious legal and moral issues because all 3 places are poor, and in some cases they already racked with violence. Like Sudan. Sudan is actually, how in the world you're going to move people to Sudan when Sudan is in the midst of a civil war? And I'm not mistaken, am I? Like, Sudan's in the midst of a civil war. And anyway, this is insane. Y'all, look, stop trying to get me to give y'all money. I could read the article, or maybe I think about it, but probably not. Anyway, officials from Sudan said they have rejected overtures from the U.S. Officials from Somalia and Somaliland told the Associated Press they were not aware of any contacts. First of all, when did Somaliland succeed from Somalia? Like, what's happening with that? When did that breakup happen? Like, what is going on? Anybody got any information on that? Because that's news to me. Be before they straight black pride, the straight black sock. So, like, the idea of putting Palestinians who just uprooting them, moving them from there where they've been, putting them in Africa, in places that already have conflict, and disrupting Africa even further. This is totally crazy. Anyway, under Trump's plan, Gaza, more than 2 million people, which I don't think it's 2 million left, but whatever, would be permanently sent elsewhere. He has proposed the U.S. would take ownership of the territory, oversee a lengthy cleanup process, and develop it as a large real estate property. Now, when he says the U.S., what he means is BlackRock, which is owned by Larry Fink, who has dual citizenship with Israel, I'm sure. So it would be what they call in the WEF a public-private partnership, where people who have immense wealth would get more wealth, and people who don't have anything would get the boot to the backside. Anyway, the idea of a mass transfer of Palestinians was once considered a fantasy of Israel's ultra-nationalist fringe. But since Trump has presented the idea at a White House meeting last month, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has held it as a bold vision. Of course, he probably gave him the idea. Palestinians in Gaza have rejected the proposal and dismissed Israeli claims that the departures would be voluntary. Arab nations have expressed vehement opposition and offered an alternative reconstruction plan that would leave the Palestinians in place. Rights groups have said forcing or pressuring the Palestinians to leave could be a potential war crime. The whole war has been a war crime. Like, what are we talking about here? I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I do understand, but I don't understand. Here's what I don't understand. Those who say they are Muslims, right? Those who say that they believe in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have these billion people, or however many it is, stand around and watch this atrocity take place and not do anything about it is just ridiculous, right? I mean, I'm gonna say this. As a black person in America, there are many times where we see things taking place and we don't do anything, or things happen overseas in Africa and we don't know about it. Everybody knows about what's going on in Gaza to some degree. It's just a straight genocide. It's insane. It's probably the first genocide that's been like live streamed and shown around the world, and every day somebody's recording it, because sometimes the Israelis are recording the atrocities themselves. Like other atrocities that are happening around the world, which they are happening around the world. There's atrocities in Africa. I'm talking about atrocities in China with their attacking their Muslim population. Somewhere like Bangladesh or something, some Muslim brothers talking about what's going on there. Like it's madness happening everywhere. But this is the only place where people are doing it with cameras and microphones. I thought I saw that a Palestinian reporter was either kidnapped or killed like yesterday or something. So I mean, they're doing this in broad daylight, and I'm just be honest. They do it to them today, and be knocking on Africa's door tomorrow, because they already knocking on Africa's door, talking about taking these people who have been traumatized and dropping them in Africa, knowing good and well their only thought is going to be how many people do they have to get rid of to get from where they at back to where they have been for hundreds of years before the so-called Israelis came. So I know I went off on a tangent on that. Let me get back to this article real quick. Palestinians in Gaza have rejected the proposal and dismissed Israelis' claims that departure would be voluntary. Okay, I read all that. Still, the White House says Trump stands by his vision. It's not Trump's vision. It's those millions of dollars that Sheldon Adelson's wife and other people paid to him. And of course, the money that was paid by AIPAC. That's what it is. Let's just call it what it is. Let's all be adults here. Now, speaking on conditions of anonymity to discuss the secret diplomatic initiative. U.S. and Israeli officials confirmed the contacts with Somalia and Somaliland, while the Americans confirmed that they had contacted Sudan. They said it's unclear how much progress efforts have made or at what level discussions took place. Separate outreach from the U.S. and Israel to the three potential destinations began last month, days after Trump voted the Gaza plan alongside Netanyahu, according to U.S. officials, who said that Israel was taking the lead in negotiations. I'm gonna just be honest. First of all, wait a minute, hold up. I'm tripping. Yeah, Sudan is a Muslim country. So you have a black Muslim country negotiating with Israel. Okay, all of this is wrong. Yeah, this is insanity. And like, soon as that you pick up the phone and they're like, "Hey, this Netanyahu," you just hang up. Yeah, I ain't got nothing to talk to you about. Are you crazy? Yeah, how'd you get my number? You know. Anyway, Israel and the U.S. have a variety of incentives, financial, diplomatic, and security, to offer to potential partners. In other words, they're going to pay off their leaders. And the security part means if you don't accept the deal, we're going to arrange for you to slip in the shop. That's all this means. Like, we can read through the nonsense. It is a formula that Trump used 5 years ago when he brokered the Abraham Accords, a series of mutually beneficial diplomatic accords between Israel and 4 Arab countries. They were not mutually beneficial. They were 4 cowardly countries who bent over and gave evil an opening. That's what it was. It's absolutely disgusting. Anyway, the White House declined to comment on the outreach, and the office of Netanyahu and Ron Dermer, the Israeli cabinet minister and Netanyahu confidant, who has been leading Israel's post-war planning, also had no comment. But Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, that's a name, long-term advocate for what he calls quote-unquote voluntary immigration of Palestinians, said this week that Israel is working to identify countries to take in Palestinians. He also said that Israel is preparing a very large immigration department in its defense ministry. Here's a closer look at the countries involved, or that were approached, excuse me. The North African country of Sudan was among the 4 Abraham Accord nations. They already been politically in bed with Israel. In 2020, as part of the deal, U.S. removed Sudan from its list of state-sponsored terrorism, a move that gave the country access to international loans and global legitimacy. First of all, man, we take those loans. I gotta refer to our favorite book, Economic Hitman, Diary of an Economic Hitman. Straight black pride and peace to Netaru Kemet. Glad that you are here with us. You get back to it. You can't take those loans. Anyway, but relations with Israel never took off as Sudan plunged into a civil war between government forces and the RSF paramilitary group. Yeah, because there's probably another reason. They saw a chance to get that money, and then that's probably when the fighting started. I never even knew the timing of it. Anyway, the conflict has been marked by atrocities, including ethnically motivated deletions and violations, according to the UN and rights groups and virtually everybody that's been there. The International Criminal Court is investigating alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. And then President Joe Biden's administration in January said the RSF and its proxies are committing genocide. The Israelis are committing genocide, so this is what these people got in common. Of course, the U.S. and Israel will be hard pressed to persuade Palestinians to leave Gaza, particularly to go to someplace that, as far as they're concerned, would be just as bad or even worse. But they could offer incentives to Khartoum government, including debt relief, weapons, technology, and diplomatic support. 2 Sudanese officials speaking on conditions of anonymity to discuss the sensitive diplomatic matter confirmed that the Trump administration had approached the military-led government about accepting the Palestinians. I'm looking Somalia, real quick, says Somalia has been a vocal supporter of the Palestinians, often hosting peaceful protests on the streets in support. The country joined the recent Arab summit that rejected Trump's plan. It seems like an unlikely destination for Palestinians, even if they did agree to move. Sambu Shepgorer, a lawyer and conflict researcher in Nairobi, Kenya, said it's difficult to understand why Somalia would want to host Palestinians, given the country's strong support for Palestinian self-rule. The realignments keep changing, and so maybe there is a hidden agenda, he said. A Somali official speaking on conditions of anonymity because he was not authorized to talk to the media, said the country has not been approached about taking in Palestinians from Gaza, and there have been no discussions about it. And Somaliland, I guess we do need to look at it because I don't even say Somaliland, a territory of over 3 million people in the Horn of Africa, succeeded from Somalia 30 years ago, but is not internationally recognized as an independent state. Oh, okay. Okay, that's why. Because I'm like, wait, what? Anyway, Somalia considers Somaliland part of its territory. Somaliland's new president, Abdurrahman Mohammed Abdullahi, has made international recognition a priority. An American official involved in the efforts confirmed that the U.S. was having quiet conversations with Somaliland about a range of ideas where they can be helpful to the U.S. in exchange for recognition. Aha! The possibility of U.S. recognition will provide an incentive to Abdullahi to back away from a territory solidarity with the Palestinians. The United Arab Emirates, another Abraham Accord country that has developed strong ties with Israel, which is disgusting, once had a military base in Somaliland and maintained commercial interests there, including a port. The territory's strategic location in the Gulf of Aden waterway near Yemen, home of the Houthis, could also make it a valuable ally. So they would take over that base, use it as an area to attack the Houthis, who've been really helping the Palestinians by simply firing on Israel every day, all day. Before they straight Black Pride to Raw Ito White House. Yeah, this is crazy. Africa, any African nation signing on this, going out like a bad back out here. Now, what I wanted to talk about, since I've taken that first hour to do that, is we've seen the good of Africa, of being sovereign and having unity, and we've seen the bad of having disunity, warring amongst yourself, where an enemy can come in and divide and conquer. We've seen both from the articles we've read thus far. What I wanted to do was now show the reason why it's possible for these things to take place. This is our chart of African military strength. This is according to actually I don't know. Let's see. Oh, globalfirepower.com. It says ranking the military powers of Africa by country from strongest to weakest, right? Now let's take a look at this real quick. Egypt is number 1. Algeria is number 2. Right? So that's 2 non-African controlled countries on the continent who are 1 and 2. 3 is Nigeria, right? 4 is South Africa, which, how much control are the black people in control of South Africa is up for debate. And then 5 is Ethiopia. So you can make the argument that 3 of the top 5 military countries in Africa are not even controlled by Africans. And if you look of the top 5, the top 6, all of them are going down in power index. Secondly, Egypt is funded by the US, so they're not independent or sovereign. And also, I believe Egypt is 19th in military strength in the world, right? So the strongest military on the continent is an Arab country. An Arab country has the strongest military, and even that Arab country is not in the top 10, which means no African country is even in the top, and no black African country is in the top 20 of military strength. Do we see now why things happen the way they happen? Things take place that are taking place. Now, I just want to see. Let's see, go down a little further. We got Angola, which I don't even think of as strong, and then Morocco, and somehow the Democratic Republic of Congo is ahead of Sudan and Libya. Now, Libya is an Arab state. Sudan is at war with itself. They think they're Arabs. Morocco is Arab. So that's 1, 2. You could argue 2.5, 3, 4. So 4 out of the strongest militaries in Africa, according to this report, are Arab countries. We see the problem here. Like this, you can't have any sovereignty like that. You just can't. In essence, the strongest military forces on the continent are colonizers, right? We don't talk about Arab colonialism, right? North Africa has been colonized for centuries by Arabs. Because I started to say millennia, but it's not quite millennia. Now, by the way, I'm your host. This is The Center. I am your host, DC Radical One. You can follow me on Instagram, and if you're watching on Instagram, you can come on over here to YouTube, please and thank you. But you can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1, on Twitter at dcradical_ONE, on OTWTube at dcradical1. And you can donate via Cashapp if you find this information valuable at $DC Radical1. And of course, you email me at dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. Now, let me get to the next article, the part I want to get to. Why can't Africa have nukes? Now, I'm going to say this, in the 21st century, if you do not have nuclear weapons, you cannot consider yourself sovereign or free. I don't care what anyone says. Now, it says that Russian President Vladimir Putin threatens to use nuclear weapons on any country that gets directly involved in a war with Ukraine. The possibility of nuclear war has entered the public consciousness once again. While the possibility of a nuclear war between the West and Russia would undoubtedly be catastrophic for the world, it raises an interesting question as why some countries have nuclear weapons and others do not. More specifically, why doesn't any African country have nuclear weapons program despite many countries having the natural resources available to theoretically produce nuclear weapons? When the United States launched the first nuclear attacks on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan during the Second World War, the uranium obtained for the nuclear bombs came from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Neither the DRC or its neighbors have nuclear capabilities. The systemic racism that is rooted in colonialism has played a significant role in the lack of power and influence that African countries have on international security issues. Author and activist Arundhati Roy has argued that nuclear weapons I'm laughing because I y'all know I read the articles when y'all read. He said nuclear weapons are at the very heart of whiteness. That's an interesting turn of a phrase. Oh, excuse me. That's a very interesting turn of phrase. She argues that racism defines who is allowed to develop nuclear weapons, who is listened to, and which countries and peoples have been threatened, tested on, and considered for nuclear attack. It's kind of hard to disagree with that statement. Many Black and Indigenous communities have been victims of nuclear weapons testing by Western countries that held territories as colonies. That is something that you don't hear about very often. And one day I would like to get into research that, because I have heard that, but I have like the specifics I don't really know. Right. So now it says, get into it. It says with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that is often hailed as a success in the West, it has for others been described as codified nuclear apartheid, dividing the world into quote-unquote responsible nuclear powers, China, France, United Kingdom, Russia, and the United States of nuclear states, and irresponsible, illegitimate nuclear powers being predominantly non-white majority countries. Most African countries have been victims of a foreign invasion, and there is no reason why resource-rich countries such as Nigeria, Angola, or the DRC won't be considered for future invasion by foreign powers under the right circumstances. But they have no deterrent as Western countries do. One of the problems with having a nuclear weapons program is the cost. The United States spent over $37.4 billion on nuclear weapons in 2020. Even the richest African countries like Nigeria, South Africa, or Egypt, it would be hard to justify these costs when there is such an acute need for public spending to go forward towards education, healthcare, and infrastructure. I make the argument that if you're not secure, nothing else matters. But hey, that's just me. Another concern is security in Africa and how nuclear weapons may be more of a liability than an advantage for many African countries. Some analysts have warned that the risk of terrorists obtaining nuclear weapons would increase in a nuclear-heavy Africa. Now, of course, they're going to say that because they don't want Africa to have nuclear weapons. However, despite these unequal power dynamics, nuclear proliferation is not necessarily desirable in a world largely wants to move away from it. It says that many Africans are proud of the fact that their continent is nuclear-free zone and has led the way on denuclearization. With that being said, as long as major powers continue to have nuclear weapons, Africa will not be safe when they do not have them. So, with that, I'm going to add this clip where it's from a few years ago, but a couple of African brothers discuss the upside and downside of nuclear weapons on the African continent.
International Conference on Nuclear Disarmament and Lethal Autonomous Weapons was held in Pretoria today. 17 African nations have signed the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, but none have ratified it. The objective of the treaty is to prevent the increase in the use of nuclear weapons. Well, ENCA's Khayelitsha Khumalo attended the conference and joins us now. Kaya, good evening. Now, why has no African country signed the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, even though they have signed it?
Well, Vuyo, this has been really attributed to a number of reasons. For example, when you look at the continent itself, there are very few countries that you can even think who may have the capabilities of this nature. We know that, for example, when you look at South Africa in the early 90s, there was a voluntary dismantling of these particular weapons. So hence there is a very hesitation from the side of the African nations. As much as quite a number of them they supported the adoption of this particular treaty. But I mean, frankly, quite a lot of them, they really don't have such facilities. But more importantly, another argument that came quite vociferously during the course of the summits, they were saying, look, already you have an NPT, which is a non-proliferation treaty, which was adopted in 1995. But other than that, you also have within the continent itself, you have Pelindaba Treaty, which also governs the use of these particular weapons.
What was the point of this conference then, if no one has appetite for it? Besides, people can't even afford it.
I think mainly they're trying to get this particular treaty to be adopted officially as part of the international law. So for this particular treaty to be adopted as the international law, it requires at least more than 50 countries to adopt it, and then some to ratify it as well. So then that's when the enactment will happen. But apart from that, I think there is quite a desperation from the side of the campaigners, but also we know South Africa has always been pioneering and so outspoken on these issues when it comes to nuclear, because there's a very clear understanding that the world really doesn't need these particular weapons. You look at as far back as in 1945, that US attack to Hiroshima in Japan, that was quite severe, very catastrophic impact. So there's a clear understanding that we don't want to go there, especially given the very uncertainty, the tension that you see, the unilateralism that you see from the side of the US, North Korea, as much as they're promising to dismantle their own facilities. So there's that very anxiety that is really creeping up.
In fact, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. I mean, if there's an acceptance, right, that no one has appetite for this, at least for now, right, and also that very few people can afford, there has to be a reason somewhere. You know, we may not know it, you know, today, but there has to be a reason why people felt that you had to have an African conference looking at this. What if I said, I mean, not too long ago, we were on the verge, a couple of months ago, in fact, we were on the verge of signing a nuclear deal with the Russians, but that was, I mean, for energy. Maybe it could well be that someone out there feels that maybe with China, you know, I mean, coming to the party and China's presence increasing on the continent, that the threat may be real. Or some rogue government or dictator somewhere may sell weapons, nuclear weapons, cheaply to African states.
It's a very complex issue, Vuyo, especially because when you look at some of the traditional countries who are known to have these particular capabilities, another point that really came patently clear is that some of these countries are actually blocking this particular ratification. So they really want to maintain the capabilities to themselves. They don't want to see this proliferation getting into other parts of the world. So there's a gatekeeping, for a lack of a better expression, that is happening here. But
So we heard that discussion. Me before they straight black pride to Brother Elijah, and greetings to Sister Neff. We heard that discussion, and I just find it interesting. People discuss nuclear weapons in some of the articles I've read, and I saw that clip. This idea among the people, this misunderstanding among the people of the continent of the necessity of power, I find quite disturbing. The idea that because you don't have nuclear weapons, you are protected by the goodwill of the people that do have nuclear weapons, or I don't actually know. You know what I'm saying? What they're thinking. I'm gonna just be honest. In a world of violence, being unarmed is never a good idea, right? But that's the mentality that many of the people on the continent seem to have in regards to this issue, and it's quite disturbing. Now, I'm gonna get to this article, and then I'm gonna show a clip from the Europeans as they talk about it. But I want to get to this article because I think they brought up this treaty. This is the from the United Nations themselves. This is the Treaty of Pelindaba. The Treaty of Pelindaba makes Africa a nuclear-free zone. This is, I don't know, can y'all see that? Can y'all see that? Is that big enough? Okay, yeah, y'all can see that. That's big enough. All right. Excuse me. There's no nuclear weapons here, right? But the enemies of Africa have nuclear weapons. Like, France is an enemy of the AES, right? The AES kicked France out of Africa and secured their uranium, which helps run the nuclear reactors that provide the electricity in France. The idea that France is just going to, not retaliate is just plain silly. So let's look at this article. All right. The African Nuclear Free Zone Treaty, also known as the Pelindaba Treaty, established the nuclear weapon free, zone on the African continent. The entire continent has to be free of nuclear weapons. In essence, the entire continent of Africa is thus unarmed, right? It opened for signature on April 12, 1996 in Cairo, Egypt, and entered into force on July 15, 2009. So there were 13 years. It took 13 years for Africa to sign this treaty. Now, what's crazy is, if this is the case, the United States knew Gaddafi not only didn't have any nuclear weapons, but couldn't have nuclear weapons if they were a signatory to this treaty. And therefore, the myth of them killing Gaddafi because of weapons of mass destruction or whatever the case may be is a complete and total lie. All right? Now, I want to ask you all, how many people know about this treaty? How many people have heard of the Treaty of Pelindaba? If you've heard about it, put a 1 in the chat. Now, get back to this article. Says the treaty requires all parties to apply full scope International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards to all their peaceful nuclear activities. So the IAEA, say that real quick, they're in charge, and I'm as soon as I read this article, I'm gonna show you what they say, and I'm gonna be out of here in the next half hour. The Pelindaba Treaty has 43 signatories. Among them, Algeria, Angola, Benin, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Chad, Comoros, Republic of Congo, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea, Eswatini. Like, they have even the smallest, tiniest countries. Ethiopia, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, Lesotho, Libya, Madagascar. You see, Libya was there in 2009. Malawi, Mali, Mauritania, Mauritius, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal, Seychelles, South Africa, Tanzania, Togo, and Tunisia. In addition, the following 51 states have signed the treaty, including all the ones we mentioned and ones we didn't, like Egypt, Eritrea, Eswatini, Ethiopia. So I think the only one that probably haven't is like South Sudan. So that's, but we showed the map. They got everybody. Togo, Uganda, everybody. Right? Now, says internal coordination mechanism. For the purpose of ensuring compliance with the undertakings of this treaty, the parties agreed to establish the African Commission of Nuclear Energy with headquarters in Pretoria, South Africa. Now, there's a book I wish I could remember the name of the book, but it deals with who really runs South Africa, and it's not the black people. And you'd be shocked to know it's not the regular white people. I'll let you figure out that. So that is why this treaty, the Pelindaba Treaty, is why Africa, the entire continent, is a quote-unquote nuclear-free zone and is thus completely and totally unarmed. But I'm going to let you all listen to the person in charge of the, what do you call it, the AEIE, as he, tells us how great this treaty is.
Gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be here with you today, the 5th anniversary of the opening for signature of the Treaty of Pelindaba. Let me start by recalling that though the treaty was opened for signature in 1996, Africa was among the first regions where countries declared their readiness to establish a continental nuclear weapon-free zone. In 1964, at its first summit in Cairo, the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the then Organization of African Unity adopted the Declaration on the Denuclearization of Africa. This seminal declaration was subsequently endorsed by the United Nations General Assembly. In 1991, taking advantage of the new developments in the international arena, African states commenced the process of implementing the 1964 declaration with the first meeting in Addis Ababa of an AU-UN established joint group of experts. The IAEA was with you in this process back then. We assisted in the development of the treaty, including through participation in meetings and workshops and provision of technical expertise, as should be expected. The entry into force of the Treaty of Pelindaba in 2009 was highly significant for the non-proliferation architecture by expanding the coverage of nuclear weapon-free zones. I commend African states for having had the vision, the courage, and the perseverance to bring to life a treaty that protects current and future generations. The IAEA is the competent authority responsible for verifying that African states are indeed complying with their undertakings under the NPT and the Pelindaba Treaty. It provides assurances through the implementation of safeguards that nuclear material is used exclusively for peaceful purposes. Article 9 and Annex 2 of the Pelindaba Treaty on the verification of peaceful uses of nuclear energy are especially important as they strengthen the international safeguards system. Since the entry into force of the Treaty of Pelindaba in 2009, we have also assisted our member states who are parties to the treaty through our legislative assistance program. 36 parties and 9 signatories have received assistance from the IAEA. But we are not alone in this effort. I applaud the determination and work of AFCON in recent years to strengthen the capacity of the parties to the treaty in implementing their safeguards agreements with the agency. The agency cooperates with AFCON in this area through joint capacity building activities and by supporting its latest initiative of establishing AFCON collaborating centers in nuclear safeguards. Ladies and gentlemen, the benefits of the Treaty of Pelindaba transcend the nuclear non-proliferation area. The treaty promotes confidence in the region, and it paves the way for the advancement of the peaceful use of nuclear technology on the continent. And just like back in the 1990s, the IAEA is in this with you now. We are currently assisting Benin, Burkina, Chad, Malawi, Niger, and Togo to establish their first radiotherapy centers to facilitate access to cancer screening, treatment, and care. The IAEA is also supporting 48 veterinary laboratories in 45 African member states through the VetLab network to strengthen their capacities in early warning, in risk reduction, and management of national and global health risks. In several African countries, including Kenya, Mauritania, Senegal, and Sudan, we have used nuclear technologies such as nitrogen-15, that is a stable, non-radioactive isotope of nitrogen, and moisture nutrient probe to develop climate-smart agriculture practices for strategic application of nutrients and water to enhance food security.
Now, you all heard that gobbledygook and mumbo jumbo. BB Bode to Sister Simone. I let it play that long because non-radioactive isotopes to help with food security. I'm gonna say this. I'm not a scientist. I haven't looked into it. That doesn't seem like it doesn't pass the smell test for me. Africa is the most fertile place on earth once you get away from, of course, the Sahara, which is the least fertile place on earth. All right. So why would why would an organization that's in charge of maintaining and managing nuclear power be in charge of helping in food security? I mean, look, it don't make no sense to me. You know what I'm saying? You could say, hey, DC, you just don't know what you're talking about because you're not an expert in this field. And I will say, I concur with that assessment. I am not an expert in this field. I am simply asking questions because it does not make sense to me. Maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. But I wanted to play that and just show everyone that if we sit around and we wonder, man, why does Africa do this? Why do these African nations do that? Why don't they do A, B, C, and X, Y, Z? Because in a very real way, they are militarily powerless. And, you know, when I saw this information with this treaty that I was, I heard the name, but I never looked into what the treaty was and what it meant. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, this explains a lot. So what I'm gonna do real quick, because the brother said I missed the announcement, and indeed I did. I'm gonna say this real quick because it goes with our theme. Brother Irritated Genie is continuing his African Survival in the 21st Century Tour, 2025 lecture tour. Saturday, April 5th, 2025, he will be at Positive Vibes, which is Positive Vibes 2, which is at 415 North Military Highway in Norfolk, VA. Of course, this one is free for African people. And at 6 p.m., he'll be doing a book signing, and then the lecture will begin at 7 p.m. So if you're in the Norfolk area, I highly suggest you attend this event. If you are a Black person that wants to know what's going on. Now, let me see. I think I might have had one more article. Let's do this one real quick and then we'll close out. Some more good news. Says Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger withdraw from the International Organization of La Francophonie, which means the International Organization of French Speakers. Right? Says last week, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger announced their withdrawal from yet another French neocolonial institution, the International Organization of La Francophonie. Although its stated purpose is to promote the French language and greater cooperation amongst Francophone countries, a joint statement by all three countries accuses the OIF has, however, become a remote-controlled political instrument operated from Paris to suit its geopolitical considerations. The three countries were founding members of the OIF. Its precursor was established in 1970 at a summit in Niger's capital of Niamey as the Agency for Cultural and Technical Cooperation, which transformed into the Intergovernmental Agency of French-Speaking World in 1998, before rechristened as the OIF in 2005. Despite their 55 years of contribution to strengthening the organization, the trio complained that the OIF showed a disregard for their sovereignty. Well, of course they did, by selective implementation of sanctions after the ouster of former French-backed regimes in their country. So, that's not a shock to anyone. Says Western-backed institutions attempt to undermine the AES states. And you know that. Amid mass protests demanding the expulsion of French troops from their countries, the army sided with the anti-imperialist movement, ousting what were domestically perceived as puppet governments of the former colonizer. In Mali in 2020, in Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023, the popularly supported military governments that replaced these regimes severed diplomatic ties with France and expelled its troops from the countries. Instead of accompanying these countries in achieving the legitimate aspirations of their peoples in accordance with their objectives of peace, cooperation, and solidarity, the statement added that the OIF was quick to retaliate by suspending and sanctioning these countries. ECOWAS, another institution in the region, regarded as neocolonial and linked to France and the US, has gone beyond suspensions and imposition of crippling economic sanctions, even threatening a France-backed military invasion of Niger in 2023. However, the three Sahelian navies stood their ground, uniting to form a military pact that evolved into a confederation, which we know as the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States. AES's withdrawal from ECOWAS came into effect this January, reducing the land area under the regional bloc to less than half of its original size. Following this, on 17th, Niger and Burkina Faso announced their exit from the OIF, and Mali followed suit the next day. Mali cannot remain a member of an organization whose actions are incompatible with constitutional principles founded on state sovereignty, read the foreign minister's statement. OIF spokesperson Vanderlei says it's never good news to learn that states want to leave. Of course not. Anyway, let's just bypass what he said because we don't care. Only 3.7 million of the over 23 million Malians speak French, which I did not know. Nevertheless, French was the designated official language until mid-2023, when the new pro-sovereignty government demoted its status to a working language while elevating multiple African tongues as the official languages of Mali. It is in the continuation of this anti-colonial direction that the AES countries announced their withdrawal from the OIF, described by Le Monde as a post-colonial entity that resembles the Commonwealth. Their withdrawals will reportedly take effect in 6 months. Presently, the OIF has 93 member states. However, amid the growing strength of popular movements in France's former colonies in the Sahel and West Africa, including Benin, Ivory Coast, and Chad, its ability to continue exerting influence, i.e. brainwashing through propaganda, is weakening fast. So, brothers and sisters, um, we we got good news and bad news, which pretty much describes life in general. The good news is that the AES is on the move and they're reaching for sovereignty in every step that they can. And the bad news is that many of the other African countries are slow to move. So let me make this announcement real quick. That brother, you got ripped off his put in that also starting next Monday, Irritated Jenny will resume his Kamathi Liz program on WSYP951.com, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio at 10 a.m. on Mondays. And that will be throughout April. So that's 4 Mondays in a row. All right. Thank you for that, brother. So, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. I thought that this information was important and pertinent, and I hope that you all found value in this information. I may have one more live stream to close out the month, and then I'll let you all know from there. But again, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If anybody happen to check in over on the Instagram side, I appreciate that as well. And with that, I say a BB for ODA and straight black pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical, the numeral 1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cashapp is $DC Radical 1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A BB for ODA and straight black pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share.